Hey, what's up everybody? Today I'm going to show you how I clean my bait casting reels. This is the same Lew's Tournament MB that you may have seen me reuse some braided line on a couple of videos ago. But today I'm going to break it down and clean it. I do this about once a year with a little bit of minor cleaning, probably 2 or 3 times during the fishing season in between. This isn't going to be a total breakdown of the reel. If you want to see how to do that, you can go see Tackle Junkie 81's videos. He does a pretty good job at that. I don't find that necessary. He takes it all the way down to each individual screw, spring, washer, and runs them through an ultrasonic cleaner. And I just go to get the obvious dirt and grime out of there and replace the grease and oil it up. So anyway, we'll get into it in just a second. To do this, all you're going to need is a small Phillips head screwdriver, maybe a toothbrush, 10mm socket, and a couple of Q-tips, as well as some reel oil and grease. So give me just a second, we'll get started. Alright, first thing I usually do is take the side plate off, the side that has the magnetic braking system on it. And you just do that by holding out that little spring-loaded retaining knob that's on the handle side of the reel, and then you give the side plate a rotation upward, and it comes right off. That will also allow you to go ahead and remove the spool from the reel. And then with that off and those magnetic brakes exposed, all I do really is just take a Q-tip and run it around in there and clean off the surface dirt and kind of clean off around that bearing too. And you can kind of see how dirty the tip of the Q-tip is getting. So there is definitely some grime in there. And one thing I want to warn you about: some people elect to go ahead and take that bearing out right there. That's the bearing that the end of the spool sits in. But to take it out, you have to remove the little hexagonal shaped bearing retainer that's in there. Let's see if I can get it to focus for you so you can see that. It's trying. Anyway, if you look real close, you can kind of see it right in there. I don't recommend taking that out. I did it on my Lew's Speed Spool LFS a couple of weeks ago, and that thing went flying, and I haven't found it since. Fortunately, I called Lew's, and they're going to send me a replacement free of charge so I can put that back in there. But without that clip, that bearing will pop right out of there. So heads up, if you decide you want to take that out, I don't know, do it in such a way that you're going to be able to find it if it flies away from you. Anyway, just kind of clean that out real good and get all the obvious dirt and grime out of it. And while you're here, go ahead and take a drop of reel oil. I'm using Lucas Oil brand reel oil here. I think I got it in a mystery tackle box several months ago. And just put 1 drop on that bearing, and you're good to go. Okay, set that aside. Since you have the spool out, again, just a surface cleaning with the Q-tip. You can wipe out this bearing here that you see. Any surface dirt. There's the centrifugal brakes, as you can see right there. That looks pretty clean. And then again, while you have it here in your hand, go ahead and hit that bearing with a drop of real oil. Set that aside. Okay, next thing you're going to start taking the reel handle and the star drag and all of that stuff off of this side of the reel so that you can get to the gears underneath. And it's pretty straightforward. But as you're taking things off of the reel, I recommend you kind of just line them up in the order that you're taking them off. That way it's not so confusing when you start putting it back together. And so the first thing you do is you take your Phillips and go ahead and remove this little screw that holds this little cover over your handle retaining nut. And I'll just set that screw right there. And your little cover should come right off. There it is. Put that down. And now you can see that you can access the nut that holds the reel handle on there. And this is when you're going to take your 10mm socket and loosen that up. There. Only takes about a quarter of a turn because it's not on there very tight to begin with. And screw that off. Put it in your lineup, and then the handle comes right off. Now you can kind of see your star drag there, and it may or may not have a couple of spacers right here that were between the handle and the actual drag nut. But in fact, if you look on the back side of this reel handle right here, there's actually a spacer right there. It's stuck to the reel handle. I'm just going to leave it right there so that it doesn't get away from me. But to take this thing off, you just rotate it counterclockwise, you know, just like any lefty loosey. And once it gets up past the area of the clicker, it'll kind of spin freely and just come right on off of there. And on this reel, the clicking mechanism is actually built into the star knob here. So set that down. Now if you can see them, there's a couple of spacers and kind of a star-shaped washer that sits on the main drive shaft here. And I like to just go ahead and just pull all those off together and leave them in the same order that they're on there, and then set them down so I'm not confused about how they go back on. And there's actually another one on here that I missed, so let me get that guy. I'll just put him down right there. Next, you're going to take off your spool tension knob, and just like the drag star, it just screws right off counterclockwise and then lifts right off. Clicker's built in. I don't see any spacer that goes on there, so I'll set that down. And now you got to start taking screws off the side plate here in order to get the rest of it apart. And there are 3 of them. You can see there's one there, and then there's another one right up here at the top. So I'll start. And it's a good idea to kind of orient this reel while you're doing this so that those screws are coming out in a, oriented in a way that you can remember how they go in. So I'm looking at the reel, looking down at it right now, so that I can kind of get like a top to bottom view of it, and I'm going to take these screws out and put them down on my cloth in order, like these 2 at the top and then this one at the bottom, so I remember which one goes where, because they are different sizes. top right. And then there's actually one more, and it's the screw that holds the lube port cover on, which is right there. So you're going to take that guy off. Come on out of there. There you go, and I'm just going to sit it down along with the cover. Put them down together since I know where they go, that they belong to each other. Okay, so that's everything that's holding this side plate on to the gears that are underneath it. So with that, you just kind of like lift this thing straight up. And set that off to the side. This is a little a bushing that fits inside the center. I'll just set that over there with the side plate. But now you get a good look at what's actually inside the reel. And a couple of other things to be aware of. These two springs right here, they lift right off. And I'm going to take them off right now and set them over to the side, so that they're not in my way. Just you have to remember to put them back on there and be very careful when we put the side plate cover back on. Now you can see the main gear, and then there are also a couple of spacers on top of that thing, but this thing will now just lift right off. But you want to keep those pieces oriented the way that they're coming off, and I don't know if you can kind of see it in the camera view here, but that first metal drag washer right there has a kind of a raised piece to it, and you want to make sure that that stays with that raised piece up. And then if you turn it over, sorry I don't know the technical names of all these, but that piece with the teeth on it right there that's stuck to the bottom is the mechanism that allows when you press the spool release knob, that helps it engage right there and stay released until you turn the reel handle. Okay, so I'm going to put all that down exactly the way that I took it off. And now you can see all the internals. And all I do to clean this basically is just go through there with the Q-tip and try to dig all that old grease and stuff out of there. And you can see again that thing's coming away pretty dirty. Lots of old gunked up grease in there. So at some point I probably had a little bit too much grease in it, because it looks like it's kind of been slung around on some of these parts. But so it's good that I'm breaking it open and getting it all out of there. It's actually relatively clean inside here, cleaner than I expected it would be. While you're in here, this piece right there's the pinion gear, and you can take that out, but that little plastic, like a yoke or collar right there, is going to come out with it probably, and you just got to make sure that it goes back in there the correct way. It's not too difficult to remember which way it goes in. There's like a little Teflon metal piece right there that goes toward the top. So if you can just remember that, you should be good to go. But it's got a lot of gunky grease in there that I'm going to wipe out. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and take my toothbrush and wipe out that pinion gear a little bit. It's pretty clean. Now I'm going to put it back in that little collar and set it back in the reel. There we go. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to put my little springs back. And then I'm going to put my main gear assembly back on there. But while I have it out, I'm going to take that toothbrush and kind of get all of that old grease out of the teeth. And I'm not going to mess too much with all the drag washers and everything. They're supposed to be kind of tacky, sticky with grease, and they are right now. And it doesn't look that dirty, so I am not going to bother about replacing it this go around. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop that assembly back onto the drive shaft. There we go. Make sure it fits down over the top of those two springs. Okay, I'm going to put my lube port cover back on. It just fits right back down in there. Then you take the screw, pop it back in. Good to go. Then you're going to pop your spool back in. And then put your other side plate back on. And that is pretty much it. And that feels really smooth. And should be good to go for the next year. Oh, a couple other things I forgot. Look around real good in some of these moving mechanisms, like the worm gear that drives the line guide. And sometimes I noticed like plant material and stuff from the lake gets kind of gunked up in there. And you can get in there with a Q-tip or a brush and get all that stuff out of there. And it might be a good idea also to put some fresh grease in there. But other than that, just giving it a good surface cleaning. Sometimes I'll spray it down with this Ardent Real Clean and give it a good wiping down to get all the surface dirt off of it. And also, may want to oil these points right here where the reel handles go. But that's it, and hopefully you found that useful and you're not so intimidated to take your reel apart and give it a good cleaning. Also, for Lew's Reels anyway, if you go to their website, they have pretty good parts breakdowns on there, and you can pull them up on your computer screen and enlarge them. So if you do get confused about the order that some of those washers and spacers go back onto the reel, that can help square you away. Anyway, so I think this one's ready to put to bed for the winter, and looking forward to breaking it back out and getting it dirty again next spring. Take care.